Hey there, welcome back to the Win a Pageant podcast. I'm your coach, Alicia Darby. Now, this episode features a client of mine who agreed to 3 specific things: to be coachable, to be vulnerable, and to have her coaching session recorded and published in order to help you. So I know that a lot of women who haven't had pageant coaching before don't really know what to expect or how much can you really even get done in 30 minutes. So this client of mine agreed to have her session recorded in order to show you what gets done and how it gets done during a virtual coaching session, okay? So I want you to listen to this call from 2 different perspectives. First of all, I want you to think, could pageant coaching, especially virtually, even be something that could help you in your pageant prep? I want you to be thinking about that. At the end of the video, I'll tell you how you could make that a reality for you. The second thing that I really want you to pay attention to is I want you to think the things that I'm sharing with her, the coaching that I'm giving her, how can you apply that coaching to your own pageant prep, okay? What are the things that she's learning in this and the skills that she's developing and the strategy that she's learning? How can you apply that to yourself? I'm so grateful that this client allowed me to record this call because I know a lot of the things that she learned during this call will support you in your pageant prep. So sit back with an open mind, maybe get a notepad and a pen handy because a lot of this coaching is going to apply to you too, all right? Enjoy. So share with me kind of catch me up a little bit about where you're at and how I can help you today.
Sure. So due to everything going on in the world, our pageant has been pushed back. It was actually supposed to be next weekend, but now it's June 6th. And so that's given me a lot more time to prep and train and get more serious about all the different aspects of the pageant. So right now I'm just going through different online resources and also practicing interviews every day through websites like yourself and like different coaches on YouTube and different social media accounts.
Okay.
But I just don't want to get into a rut, I guess, where I'm just constantly training myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then looking at different ways to market myself. Since I am 25 and I'm in a Mrs. pageant, some people are going to have more experience and more notoriety and some years on me where they could have like more impact on the world. So I need to kind of figure out a way to use that to my advantage rather than seeing it as a insecurity like in the Mrs. division.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. And you've competed before in different pageants?
I have not. So this is my first one. I've always wanted to do pageants when I was younger, but just didn't have the resources. I grew up right outside of Philadelphia, so it's not very common to do pageants. So kind of in adulthood is where I've gotten the chance to do it. So this is actually my first one ever.
Cool. Oh, very exciting. I'm familiar with Philly. I grew up on the other side of the state in Pennsylvania, but in a rural area. So the pageant scene was a little bit different than what you're experiencing. So cool. Well, first, welcome to the world of pageantry. It's a cool place to be. Yeah. So it sounds like you are on the right track. You're wise because you are at least aware enough to know that the people who have been competing for years have had impact, and that the pageant that you're competing in will have a lot to do with presentation, so glamour and just how you show up. But as with anything, the judges will be judging you based on how you make them feel. And that happens from 3 different places. The first is they have to know you. They have to feel like they know you. Not that you are like a mystery, okay? They have to feel like they like your buds, like your best friends already, right? So they want to feel like they know you. They want to feel like they like you. Likability comes from, being a nice person, being smiley, being approachable, those types of things. That's usually people that are interested in pageantry already have a likability factor, and you do as well. So that's an easy one. Okay. That one's simple. The third thing is to trust. They have to trust that you are going to be somebody that if I give you this title, I trust that you are going to actually, a year from now, have done some really amazing work with it, right? So it's not like it's just, if I give you this title, well, we're going to show up next year and it's same old, right? We actually have to prove that we're going to be able to make progress for the sake of the pageant, okay? So know, like, and trust. Now, those three things are not arbitrary things. Those are three things based on the psychology of decision making. So we make decisions just as humans. That's how we decide things. We want to, do we know this? Do we feel like we know enough about it that I'm confident in it? Do I like it? Because if you don't like something, you're not going to choose it anyway, right? And then do I trust it? So if you imagine like choosing a spouse, for example, when you're choosing a spouse, you have to feel like you know them. You don't want any secrets showing up down the road. You got to feel like you know them. You want to feel like you like them, like you could actually spend time with this person, and that you trust them to be your spouse. Okay. Those are three things you will always see. Okay. So in pageantry, for them to be able to know you, that's where your brand comes in. Okay. Your pageant brand. So oftentimes when people first compete in pageants, they say everything. They're like, yeah, I do this and I do this and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, it's like too much information, because then I feel, because you know how, like, if you were to go on a first date with somebody and you are trying to, like, you want to come off as like put together, and you want to come off as like a type of way, you're like, want them to see you as somebody who's like got their act together. There are certain things that you might remove from the conversation so that they don't think you're crazy from how you were 3 years ago or something, right? Or like the wackadoo things you did when you were 12, right? You're not going to say all that stuff because you want them to see you in a certain way. Now, those things are still a part of who you are. They've shaped you to lead you to where you are right now. But the things that you put forward are the things you want to be seen as for who you are today. That's part of your branding, okay? So you'd sent your paperwork to me before the strategy call. And have you already submitted the paperwork?
No, so luckily I just emailed my director the other day and I said, like, with the pageant being pushed back, is it okay if we kind of take it back and update it and everything? And she said that was a great idea. So this version I sent you is actually my second redraft of it. Okay,
excellent. So I'm going to suggest that you trim it down even more. So a lot of your paperwork, and in your pageant, they allow you no limit to your paperwork. Like, they're not like, oh, keep it to 2. Some pageants, they say only use the lines provided. So they give you like a line or 2 lines and you have to shove everything in there.
Yeah.
So for you, I would say less will be more, because most judges, even if they do read your paperwork, even if they read it with intent and they're highlighting things and whatnot, they're still not going to remember all the things about you. And when you walk in the room, they're going to be like trying to figure out, wait, who is this girl again? And it's like, again, I go back to the dating analogy because it's so similar. Like, if I'm trying to introduce, if I have a good friend and I want to set them up with another friend of mine, I'm going to explain that friend with a couple key highlights. Oh, well, they're really super active in their church. They are fit. They work out like every day, and they have a really good relationship with their mom or something. Okay. So I'm giving highlights of who that person is. I'm not going to go into, well, they volunteer for these 25 organizations and they love to drink tea and they'll go on hikes and take long walks on the beach. And it's like, okay, well, now this they travel, they speak 7 languages. It's like, oh my goodness. Like, it's too much information, right? So for you, I would recommend that you pare down your paperwork so that instead of even speaking in paragraph form, so there was a part in your paperwork where it said, hang on, I'm gonna click over to that, where it says, I want to read it specifically so you know the part that I'm referencing. And I'm recording this so I will send it to you immediately after our call, so that don't feel like you have to like write everything down, like we're recording it. Okay.
That's what I'm doing. I'm a big note taker, so I'm taking down notes.
I am too. And take notes, please take notes, but also know that we're recording this, so you'll have it. I always record every coaching call because sometimes we don't want to like miss anything, So, so it asks you here, do you have special skills or talents that people would be surprised to know about you? And if so, please list them. So instead of writing a paragraph for each one of these, I would recommend that you do it in either true list form. So perhaps like this first one, you have high school flag football league, which brought me to a passion for rugby. In college, I was the captain. I played all these different things, sustained an injury. So all this information, I would boil into a phrase, which might be like, captain of women's rugby team, develops good. That's it. Like in college, maybe that's all you need to say, like high school flag football. So you might say, athlete dash high school flag football, and then captain dash collegiate women's rugby team. And then maybe even after the women's rugby team, you could even put in parentheses, overcame while sustaining little injury. Oh, no injuries. Oh, okay, wait. 5 different positions before his impact while sustaining little injury. Okay. Maybe even put like parentheses, injury free, which is a huge win, exclamation point.
Okay, I like that.
So now when you rework your paperwork like this, now the judges are able to look, they don't even have to read it. So even if they did read it and you walked in the interview room, they wouldn't know how to, they're like, oh, whoops, I forgot. They highlighted women's rugby maybe, but now they're going to ask you a question like, what did you think of women's rugby? Like these kind of things. And it's like, that's a lame question, you know? So to lead your interview, you want to have curious paperwork, right? So do that. I've got a training online if you are wanting to like really hammer into the paperwork piece, but that's a taste of what I would recommend for your paperwork, that you make it more curious, but more punchy, so that they don't have to read it. You want to actually envision that they aren't reading it, okay? That's how you want to approach your paperwork. They're actually not reading it, and that as soon as you walk in the room, they're like, oh, let me get out your paperwork. And they're just scanning through it and like, oh, you had no injuries as a rugby player. How did you get away with that? And then now you've got opportunity to talk about things that are actually important to you, that are meaningful to winning, right? So, okay. So that's the first thing. And I wanted to share that with you, but since you sent this, I think that is going to make a big difference. And that's just the difference between your first time competing. Just that if you competed a bunch, you'd have really cute little short things that will make it easy. So, you know, that should be an easy change for you. Okay. So, all right. So that's that. All right. Now tell me about your, because you talked about the impact that others are able to have. Tell me about the social impact that you are having. Like, or is there a platform that you have or community service initiatives? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So my platform is autism awareness. I chose that because both of my younger brothers are on the spectrum. My one brother is severely autistic and my other brother has Asperger's. And so since they were diagnosed, that's really shaped my life. And my parents did so much for them. And while they were kind of helping at home, I was doing my part by kind of advocating in our community for what autism was, because I grew up in a time where it was 1 in 161 kids were having autism. Now it's 1 in every 58 children are diagnosed.
Wow.
And so growing up, I tried to do different fundraisers, and I was instrumental in helping my family's nonprofit start, and it's really shaped me as a person. And so moving forward with the pageant, I want to really put out there on the forefront that that's something that's instrumental to who I am.
This is great. So how old were you when your brothers were they're both younger?
Yeah, so I was 10 and they were 5.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. And then your parents started a nonprofit? Tell me about that.
So we came together and we decided that as a family, we needed to do something to help other families who were like us, and better quality the lives of people with autism. And we were all kind of debating it, and we were thinking about, we're not scientists, we're not researchers, we're never going to cure autism, but we wanted to make the daily lives of families better. And so we started doing programming, and we started doing different trips for families and just stuff that wasn't didn't feel isolating. When I was a kid, my brother was so tactile, he wouldn't wear clothing. And so we never had people over our houses. We never went out to dinner. We never went out to movies. And that could seem like such a privilege. But growing up, it was very isolating and it felt like we were such a weird family. And so our nonprofit, our mission was to have all these other families who are struggling with those same issues of feeling different and feeling isolated come together and realize that there was a community and that there was other families like yours.
Wow. This is so cool that your family did this. What an epic family you come from. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is cool. So are your parents still, or are you still doing this? Are they still doing this nonprofit?
So not as much. They've both retired and I live in DC now. And so the separation has caused some issues, but with, the continuing our work together. But with the pageant, it's kind of reinvigorated some ideas of mine.
Yeah.
And I was actually debating starting a support group for people who are getting married for siblings with autism.
Oh.
When planning my wedding, it was a little bit stressful because we had to think about my brother in every aspect, which is normal. I'm used to that. But for people's spouses, it might not be the same when you're a fiance who's coming from a family that doesn't have anybody on the spectrum.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
And so like during my ceremony, my brother had a little bit of a meltdown. So he was like screaming and crying during our vows, and he's 20 now. So it was people were like, oh my God, like what is going on? Yeah. So I wanted to create some type of initiative or some type of service for people where there was almost like a group of siblings in an area where they could help other siblings, like, oh, like you're having a wedding or your siblings going to college or you're having like this life event, and try to help one another, just because when you have someone in your family who has autism, your life events are always so affected by that person. Mm-hmm. So it kind of goes back to our nonprofit of like feeling different than everyone else.
Yeah. So what would that look like if you, during your planning of your wedding and then going through that experience, if you would have had a support group, what might that have looked like for you? What do you wish would have existed?
Yeah, I think it would have just been great. Like hindsight's always 20/20, right? So it's like great to find other people with like a support group of like, oh, this is what worked for me and my brother who has like sensory issues, right? Or like, for example, I know my brother, Disney music really calms him down. And so when we had this huge party bus of people, he had to come on the party bus with us to take him to the next venue. I was like, I beforehand planned it all out that we would only listen to Disney. And so during my ceremony, when he was crying and he was really upset and he wouldn't walk down the aisle, we put him in the party bus and all the group loaded up and we started playing the music, and he was so excited and he calmed down. And so I think helping others find those little things that'll make their experience better and not as stressful.
Yeah. Wow.
Is something that would have helped, just like and like even during my wedding, my mom had to watch my brother the whole time. So my mom missed out on like parts of it. So offering like here are like different caretakers in the area that help with like autistic adults or stuff like that, so that way your day you can focus on you rather than implementing like all these strategies that we did to make sure he was comfortable.
Yeah. Wow. This is so interesting and really like important too, the work that you're doing. Because you're right that generation, your brother's generation is kind of the early generation of those that were diagnosed with this. So as they now are aging, now it's becoming necessary to actually put these things in place for adults. Whereas before, if somebody, decades ago, if somebody had autism, they were shunned, hidden, not
exactly.
Yeah. So it's like But now it's like the people are coming awake to, no, these people are people. They need to live lives. Like, we need to embrace them as a part, as humans, you know, like they have rights too, and they want to be a part of these experiences. And we have to create systems and structures so that they feel comfortable, so that they feel welcome, so that so it is still a part of the experience. I love what you're doing. This is so cool, Danielle. So, okay. Very, very cool. So, let me ask you this. So, in your mind as it is, how do you envision this showing up? Like, do you envision it like an in-person group? Do you envision it like some website that would have the resources listed? Do you envision it being like a small groups that maybe meet in different cities? Like, how do you envision it showing up?
Yeah, I think it would be really awesome if it was in-person meetings through community outreach centers or churches or just local organizations. Yeah. And maybe before that, to gain like some authority on the subject. Like, I am in marketing, so I was debating like starting a blog about it and starting like, you know, this is what I did when like planning my wedding with my brother, and this is what I did for helping my other brother get into college who's on the spectrum. So just like stuff like that to kind of get movement on it. Yeah, this is great. And have you met others like you that have siblings that are on the autistic spectrum? So when I was in middle school and high school, actually, it was kind of funny. The 3 other students that I knew with siblings, we were all like, we're pretty close just because no one else really understood. But now that I've kind of moved in and graduated and everything, not so much. I don't have that community anymore. But it was funny in high school how we all kind of found each other. Yeah. Right away. You know what I mean? It was almost like a magnetism, because you were just like, oh, you know what I'm going through. Because back in school, people thought, I would say, oh, my brother's autistic. And they'd be like, oh, like artistic? That's kind of cool. Like, how old is he? Like, what does he paint? And you'd be like, no, like he's nonverbal. Right. Exactly. Yeah. You had to like explain it, and you didn't have to those other friends. Yeah. Wow. So where are they? Are they still in Philadelphia area? Yeah. Okay. All right. So now let me ask you this. You mentioned you were in marketing. What types of things do you do in marketing? Like, do you do email or billboards, or like, what's your thing? Yeah, so it's all inclusive. I do our social media, I do our signage, I do our branding across the different restaurants and retail locations that we have on campus. And so it's a little bit of everything. Okay. And for what organization is that for? Or what do you do? For Sodexo. Sodexo, it's a food and beverage service that's like on university campuses, different government contracts and everything. Oh, that's great. Okay, cool. All right. Great. This is awesome. Okay. So I'm like slowly like coming up with ideas in here. Okay. So then let me ask you, what is your creative outlet? Like, what do you like to do? Are you an artist? Do you like to be on social media? Like, what's your thing when you're just like kicking it? What do you like to do? Yeah, I love traveling and photography, and I do a little bit of modeling, and overall just creating things, I guess. Yeah, like give me an example of that. So recently I was doing modeling for a while, and it got kind of boring in front of the camera. And so I developed a little side hustle to help wedding photographers build their business by planning styled shoots for them. Oh. And I just did one a little bit ago with like 10 different models and like coordinating that and the logistics and everything. So that was super exciting. And that was something that I was planning and working on for a couple of months. That's cool. Okay. This is great. Okay. So here's a thought that I have for you. And the thing about, okay, so I'll share with you this. When I work with my clients, we create what's called a legacy project. And your legacy project is the thing that moves your brand forward
to kind of like the front of the line of all pageant contestants. And that is because what most pageant women are trying to do is be a good role model and get the word out there or raise awareness or whatever. But most pageant women, when they show up to compete, they need the pageant in order to push forward their initiative, because they don't have the contacts, they don't have the creativity, they haven't done anything really. Those women are the ones that end up usually not winning the pageant. The people who end up winning are the ones who don't really need the pageant, but rather they could run on their own. Like they're like, I'm headed this direction. I'm going full speed ahead. Are you on board or not? Right. So for you, that's what we would want to create. And that's what you're describing. You're aware of it, that there are some other women that have like been doing this for so long. They have an impact. They have a platform that they've already created. That's what we need to do for you. We've got to create, what's that thing that you are going to stand on and say, this is the train I'm on. So come on, like choose me because this is the direction we're going, you know, and you've already got the contacts, and you've already got the creativity, and you've already got the insights that you need to make that thing move, right? So that's what's going to be missing. If you were to have competed this weekend, you would have seen that, like, oh man, mine sucks. Like all these girls have been doing this forever. Like I need a thing that I can, be confident in. And what I found as a coach is that when I'm able to help somebody draw out that legacy project and create it, it adds confidence. So it then becomes the confidence that you show up for. Like you start looking around and you're like, actually, I should win this pageant. Like these girls haven't anything. And you start realizing, like, I've actually done a ton. My mission is epic. Like I should win this thing because they're crazy not to choose me, right? That level of confidence means you're going to show up in your interview, on stage, on all areas, even in orientation, at rehearsal, not cocky, but just knowing that, yeah, I probably am the best person to win this thing, right? Okay, so that's where we got to get you, okay? So it takes work. It really does take work. It isn't something that just happens overnight. It is going to take effort. For you, since your pageant is about, June, it's a couple months away. You still have some time to create stuff. Now, you're not going to be able to create version 10, just like the iPhone didn't start with iPhone X. It started with iPhone number 1, and then it had iPhone number 2, and then it had iPhone number 3. They probably still had the ideas of what they wanted it to look like in version 10, but they were still just creating it and getting feedback, Okay, that's what we've got to do for you. So, with the idea of autism being the thing, actually, I want to, just for sake of interest, I want to set that aside for a moment and ask, are there other social initiatives that you feel passionate about? Or is that the one that really just is the only thing that stands out?
Yeah, that has been the center of who I am as a person since I was a kid. And there's so many great organizations out there, but nothing that I just personally connect to as much. Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, perfect. Then you're on the right track. So if you were to create something new that were to be the thing for people, my thought for you would be that you would start with the idea of the wedding, because it's a personal experience that you just had. You probably could create a whole list of things that would be vital to someone else in your shoes. Maybe you even have other ideas of for example, maybe there's sensory things, but maybe there's other aspects of autism that also need to be considered that maybe your brother didn't necessarily go through, but that would serve somebody else. And you're aware because you have been in this for your whole life, So I would kind of create maybe like a roadmap for that. And because you've already got contacts for wedding photographers, perhaps you could find contacts for wedding planners and ask them, hey, what do you do? Do you have resources for people like this? And they might say, oh, yep, we've already got a list together. We're already working on it. They probably won't. Instead, they'll probably say, actually, no one's ever thought to do this. And perhaps you start with serving that community, whether it's the attendees, maybe it's a family member, or maybe it's an autistic person getting married themselves. So what resources might they need to have that you could then provide to them, So now you mentioned that in marketing that you do signage, that you do social media. Social media is really the easiest way to test any concept, right? So if you were to start talking about it online and start saying, hey, is anyone else out there with this I guess life positioning that they have a sibling, older or younger, that is on the autistic spectrum. Is anyone else out there like, and would anyone be interested in creating a community together? And then see what happens. Maybe you'll get people far away on the West Coast, but maybe you'll get people right in your local area, and maybe you could even reach out to those organizations that you're already partnered with and say, hey, does this exist? And if not, I want to do one workshop. I just want to get together and start with version one, I'm just going to do one and see how it goes. It doesn't need to be that people commit to every week or up to a month or whatever, but just do one. And then you might find that, that the best time to hold those workshops are during wedding season because people are starting to think about it. And so you're like, hey, if you are a bride or groom and you've got a sibling, then come to our workshop. We're going to share ideas. And you've got some content because you've gone through it. So you're able to pass out a worksheet or whatever to kind of get them an idea. But if you're thinking in person, I feel like a workshop might be a really great place to start, or even like you might call it even a mastermind group where you get a group of people together and you just share ideas and everybody is able to share ideas. What other things have you thought of and what are you dealing with and what do you need help with? That kind of thing. I do love the idea of it being in churches because I think that churches also are aware of who in their congregation are on the autistic spectrum. So they would be able to kind of refer easily. Plus, I feel like it's a great place for resourcing even beyond just oftentimes churches know who's getting married. So then it's another insight to be able to connect them to the things that they need. But even beyond that, other life situations, a funeral, imagine the same kind of thing happens at funerals. And I'm sure that it does. And so that causes a whole different type of life experience for those that are going through it. So those might be things to kind of just wet the whistle, but I would say that your next phase is to look at it big picture. How can I build this massive thing and then backtrack it a bit? I'm going to give you, I did a podcast on this. Episode number 23 talks about the legacy project. Okay. So if you go to winapageant.com/23, that's a great place to start to kind of explain a legacy project. It'll give you that insight of like, what is a legacy project and how to even go about understanding it or creating it, and some steps to do that. So that is your homework, to go to that. And then I'm going to give you another one too, because I have another one that I'm looking up the number of the podcast that it is. Let me find it here. Okay. Number 89. So first listen to episode number 23 because it explains legacy project. Then go to episode 89, which is the 5 steps to figure out your platform legacy project. So both of those resources will help you. In addition to this brainstorm, I think you're going to be on like a good step. And then if you are like really looking for more along these lines, I would check out number 66, which is a platform outline. So that would really be your next phase. Is like, okay, now I've got my legacy. I understand a legacy project. Now I'm starting to build it. Now, how do I outline it for like communication? Like how am I going to say this when I show up to the pageant? Now, how do I even explain this to people, And then number 48 is some additional things to just make sure that it's connected to your brand, make sure that you're marketing it, make sure you're focusing on the right aspect of it, and then how to actually implement it. Okay. So you've got a lot of homework there.
No, that's so helpful. I didn't see how it connected at all. And it's like kind of silly that I didn't see that everything is intertwined with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to, once you have this legacy project and you feel like, okay, now I've got confidence for this, it's going to add to the confidence of the interview. The goal then of your interview will be to keep reminding your judges like, hey, this is what now it's not like you become only that. You're still who you are. You still are going to be fun and likable, and you're still going to like love to do photography and love to model and like to travel, and you're still all of who you are. But wouldn't it be epic if when you win Mrs. America and you do start traveling to all these areas, is if you were to be able to do a meetup for families who have children with autism or who have siblings with autism or whatever. And you start doing these meetups as you travel. You know, if travel is a part of who you are anyway, imagine to start putting these groups together where you do a workshop. Anytime you go to a new city, you just go for vacation, you go to New Orleans, put together an organization or group, you know, talk to the organizations that you've got contacts with and say, hey, I want to do a workshop at your church, you know, and then you get all the organizations to start marking it. And all of a sudden on your vacation, you're like, hey, I'm going to, you know, time out my vacation and do a Saturday morning workshop for a couple hours and just get the conversations going and get people to connect, you know. Now the pageant will see you as someone that they're like, oh, shoot, this girl's got the train moving. We want to be on her tracks, you know.
Right.
So how does that feel for you? How's it feel?
No, that's amazing. I was just, I kept comparing my like family's nonprofit work to I'm volunteering now, but like on occasional, like twice a weekend or one-off groups. It wasn't anything that I had started or that like it was my real passion, you know. It was just different ways of getting involved in my community, which I really love, but nothing was, like you're saying, like my legacy project. That was my train. And it's kind of great how connected everything is. So I'm like very excited and re-energized about it.
Yay, good. Does it feel doable? Does it feel like you can do it?
Yeah, definitely. It was like so silly that I didn't realize like with the modeling connections and doing bridal work that it would help so much with helping people who are going to get married or like having big life events with someone who was autistic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. This is going to be incredible what you are building. As you get going, you've got a couple of months. If you get stuck along the way, the best program is the pageant interview game plan. So the game plan, this is online. This is the online course that really goes through, first we talk about branding. So we make sure that your brand is solid, that we understand who you are. Then we go into legacy project and how to develop that out. There's a specific training in there that is specific to legacy project for people who need extra support in drawing it out. Then we talk about communications, which is paperwork. So you'll get that paperwork training that I mentioned, which if you're like, I just need the paperwork training, you can get that separately. And I even have an offering where I can review it for you, where we go back and forth and edit it and get really like, here's why, Danielle, because I fully believe that the top 10 can be selected on paperwork alone. And the paperwork that you sent me is lovely and it shares a lot about you, but it isn't top 10 type of paperwork. So that's why I'm saying pare it down, like that example that I gave you earlier. Do that throughout everything so that it's really clean and it's really legible and it's really like they barely even have to read it. It's so easy for them to get to know you, to like you, and to trust you as a title holder, right? So paperwork and then communication. So even though it's the pageant interview game plan, it's all about building a legacy project from your brand, communicating it in paperwork and in interview and an onstage question, and then analyzing that. So how am I doing, you know, so that when you show up for your pageant, you have all the skill sets that if someone's been competing for years, they've been getting feedback time after time after time for each competition, you know, this kind of advances you in that. So that would be if you are ready for more, or if you're like, I definitely want to win this one. Like, even though it's your first pageant, you're like, I want to win. Like, not everybody does. Like, some people, they don't want to win their first pageant. They're like, I'm just getting my feet wet. I'm just testing things out. But if you are like, no, Alicia, I'm not trying to do this again. Like I've already invested a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of effort, then that might be something that you consider. So I'll send you the link to that. It's winapageant.com/game plan. I'll send you the link so you can take a look at it and see if it might be a good fit for you. Okay. Cool.
That's awesome.
Good. So I'll send that stuff to you. I'm also going to send you this recording so that you have it right away and you can listen back to things and kind of reflect on things. And it's good you've got some time because now you can clean up these little details before your pageant.
Definitely. Thank you so much. This was so amazing. I wasn't going to apply because I was like, I'm sure, there's no chance for me, but I'm so happy that I did.
Good. Yay. I'm happy to hear that. That's awesome. Well, I am glad that we got to connect today, and keep me posted. Let me know how things go. All right.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Ooh, wasn't that good stuff? Oh, I hope you learned so much from her. I know I had so much fun doing this strategy call with her, as we usually do. It's fun. So, two things. If you need to hear more of these strategy sessions, because they're so good and you can learn so much from them, then just search strategy sessions, because I have a few more clients that also agreed to be recorded. So you'll be able to look at the behind the scenes of their calls as well. And then if you are ready to schedule your strategy session, you can go to winapageant.com/coaching. That's going to take you to my calendar so you can see what appointments are available and when you can book yours. And you'll also see pricing options there, which types of calls are available and how much do each of them cost. And you can book your call directly from there. I cannot wait to work with you. Head over to winapageant.com/coaching to check it out. I'll see you next time.